Good morning, everyone. My name is Gina Black, and it's my pleasure to host this exciting webinar in conversation with Keely Sonntag on behalf of Screen Queensland. I respectfully acknowledge the Turrbal and Jagera Nation, the traditional custodians of the land where this event is taking place today. I recognise the continuing connection to land, waters, culture, and kin that Aboriginal peoples and Torres Strait Islander peoples uphold, and pay my respects to their elders, both past, present, and emerging. I would especially like to welcome any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us today. Keely, I'd like to hand over to you to say a few words.
Thank you. Yes, I would also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country on which Survivor was filmed, the Mitakudi people, and pay respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Thank you. My name is Keely Sonntag. I am the executive producer of Survivor. I'm actually, I do live in Sydney now, hence why I'm in my lounge room, but I am a Queensland girl, Queenslander at heart. I grew up on the Gold Coast. I went to high school on the Gold Coast. I went to Griffith University to do my Bachelor of Communications. And I also got my first TV job on the Gold Coast on Big Brother when that was filmed at Dreamworld. So I'm very much a Queenslander. I was so excited to be involved. I've been involved with Survivor now for two series. I did the All-Stars series as co-executive producer and did this series, Brains versus Brawn, which is about to broadcast as the executive producer. And having it kind of be shot in Queensland. It's the first time the Channel 10 version of the show has been filmed in Queensland, in Australia. And to be in the outback has been really exciting. It felt a little bit like coming home for me, which was really lovely. I started my kind of TV career, I guess, a little bit older. I was in my late 20s and I'd started to study journalism, and I actually got a job working on the website, on the Big Brother website, writing for them. And I thought, oh, this TV thing's quite fun. And so I actually changed my degree, moved into a film and TV degree, finished that. And then for the last kind of 15 years have been working in reality and entertainment television. So that's kind of where I'm at now, and have just wrapped. We're in the post-production phase now of Survivor, Brains versus Brawn. So that's where we're at.
It's great, actually, Keely, because you are an incredibly experienced executive producer in the world of reality television. And you've only mentioned just a few of your productions. So I wanted to let the audience know a few more things that you've worked on, because most people don't tell them everything. So I know that you've worked on MasterChef and Junior MasterChef, and you mentioned Big Brother and Top Model, The Farmer Wants a Wife, Excess Baggage, Beauty and the Geek, I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, and obviously we know a lot about that up here. Shark Tank, and that's just to name just a few. And it's lovely that you mentioned that, you know, your most recent production has been Australian Survivor Series 6, supported by Screen Queensland and the Queensland government. And you produced it in the central west town of Cloncurry, which is just amazing here in Queensland. It was lovely to hear you say that. And the fact that you are a Queenslander. And then you've kind of said that you did a degree and then you moved across into television, which is really exciting. But what actually took you into reality TV? It's a very, very different format. What took you there?
Yeah, I think the time that I was starting out, a lot of people get into TV because their parents or their family, you know, there could be a family member. That wasn't the case for me. I got into it sort of in a side way from this kind of journalism side. I thought I wanted to be a writer or a journalist, and I got exposed to television in quite a different way, and the only way that I got exposed to it was via reality TV. So in a sense it was all that I knew, and at that time, you know, in terms of reality and entertainment TV, Big Brother was such a huge, this is kind of 2006, 2007, started in 2001. It was such a huge place where people could hone their skills. You know, you're churning out just daily episodes every, you know, an hour every day, which is, it's almost like a news kind of broadcast, you know, in that sense, where you're just having to churn out churn out all this content, and it was a really good way, and still is because it's been made again now, but a really good way for young people and junior people to hone their skills. And to this day, I actually still work with, you know, the production executive on Survivor. We first met on Big Brother back in those days. And so to this day, I still work with quite a lot of people in the industry who have come up through there. And I think reality TV for me, it just kept, there was another show, it was an industry that was growing and growing and growing, and there would be another opportunity. And that's, I don't want to say I just fell into it, but that's sort of how it happened. You know, it was more and more of those types of shows got made, and they were quite popular at the time. And thankfully for me, you know, it's they're still getting made. So that's great.
And they've gained such amazing popularity as the years have gone by. I know when reality TV first started, it was mostly actors that were saying, oh no, we're never going to work again. And, you know, then crews were worried that they weren't experienced in it. And it was lovely to hear you talking about bringing people into the industry and training the younger ones to work on these sets, because there are so many reality shows, and I've only named just a handful of the ones that you've worked on. So it clearly is, you know, part of our content and part of our culture now in Australia as well, which is amazing. Opened up many worlds for many people, and lots of great work opportunities for crew and, you know, people behind the scenes. But I'd like to ask you something. So, I mean, obviously you've worked in many different, you know, towns and cities around Australia, but I mean, throughout Australia, but what attracted you to film Australian Survivor Series 6 in Cloncurry in central West Queensland? What brought you back?
It was, you know, we were initially going to go back to Fiji. We did have some plans to go back to Fiji because, you know, it had been there for a couple of years before that. Obviously, COVID happened and borders were shut. Every international travel was shut down, but and as awful as the pandemic has been, I actually think that, you know, it was a blessing in some ways for us, because we got to, and Australia will now get to experience Survivor in Australia in a way that I don't think we've ever seen before. We chose Cloncurry specifically because it was very different to Fiji or Samoa or these kind of tropical islands. And I think we didn't want to, and initially we were kind of looking at coastal or kind of tropical kind of areas, but it didn't take long for us to decide that didn't suit what we were trying to do with Survivor. You know, Survivor needs to have a feeling of remoteness. It needs to have a feeling of, you know, spectacular beauty, and it needs to have a feeling that, you know, this is putting people out of their comfort zone. You know, everyday people, everyday city people who come and play Survivor, you know, they're going to be challenged in this environment. And it just, you know, you see, and I can't wait for, people have already started to see the vision, but we've just got shots of such vast, incredible landscape of you know, these beautiful dams, of the wildlife, the wildlife that we shot in Cloncurry and around the area. It's just incredible. Like in Fiji, you know, you don't, or in Samoa, it's not as I don't think there's not as much variety in terms of the wildlife, you know, and it's not as in your face. You know, we would drive to work and there would be camels or emus walking past, you know, and kangaroos everywhere. So it was, I think it's pretty special for Aussies to see that in their own backyard.
We were super excited because obviously when Catherine Metcalf, who's our location manager, and I were first talking to you, and it's like, wow, how do we attract them to Queensland when you've come from Fiji? What do we do? You know, because obviously we talked lots about, you know, far north Queensland, and we kind of started thinking about Central West, but obviously you had your own ideas as well. So when you're thinking about something like Cloncurry and you know what the audience are already looking at, and we'll take questions at the end as well, how did you, and I know you can't give away too much, and you mentioned some of it, and we've all seen the trailers, how did you adapt your thought process to moving across to such a completely different look for the show?
It was a bit of a switch. We had to change things, and I think there were different things and little things in the behind the scenes kind of process that all of a sudden we don't have to worry about tides, you know, which is something we have to worry about in a coastal location. You know, can we do this challenge here, or is the tide, or what time can we do it because the tide's going to be coming in or going out? We don't have that problem, but we had to think about, is there still going to be water there in a month's time? Because, you know, the evaporation and we have a real seasonal kind of location in Cloncurry. We had to think about the diet that we, you know, the rations that we give to our contestants, because they don't have access to coconuts, you know, they don't have access to papayas and bananas and things like that, those tropical fruits. So, you know, we had to slightly change, make sure they had some nuts, some seeds, some kind of legumes, that type of thing, to make sure that even their basic rations were enough. You know, we had to think about the way that we, you know, build in terms of the ground that we build on, because even the ground is different to what we do in terms of building and setting up things. It's not just pure sand, or it's, you know, the dirt isn't the same, which is, we had to deal with dust, a lot of dust in Cloncurry, which normally we're having to deal with, which is really corrosive and awful, kind of salt air and salt water. Which is one thing we have to deal with in a tropical location. But, you know, it was a dust thing. So we had to change, and we didn't know really any of this. And it was, you know, the help from local councils, the help from Screen Queensland, it was the help from everyone, all those that local knowledge that we really needed to bring into the production and include in our thought process. So yeah, we were thankful for that.
And I'd like to talk about that in a bit more detail with you as well. So at Screen Queensland, we run the Film Friendly Pathways program. We've got 77 councils up here, and many of those are part of our program. And Councillor Greg Campbell, who's the Mayor of Cloncurry, is actively part of our program. And he's seen firsthand the incredible economic impact and also the community engagement that Australia Survivor has brought to his town. He talks about it a lot. But how important was it for you and Endemol Shine to engage early with the town? And how on earth did you explain to him that you're about to walk in with several hundred people?
I know it can be quite intimidating, and we try not to. You know, the first trip in is usually only with a couple of people, and then it expands to like 10 people, and then it's maybe 15, and then all of a sudden it's hundreds. So we try to gently introduce how, because it's a big production. We're one of the biggest in Australia in terms of reality. And so Greg was incredible. You know, he was there and such an advocate for the area and for the people, and he was so positive and so you know, just sure that he could make this work. Him and the town could make it work. Luke Chaplin is another one who's at the council, who actually ended up, you know, being part of the production, like being one of our assistant directors, him and his sister. And so it was that inside knowledge that was really beneficial to us. And I think people can understand that it's a great show. Like, it's a show that, you know, doesn't necessarily be great from, you know, doing strange things. Like, it's a show that people can get behind. It's a reputable show, but also it brings a really reputable crew. Like, we have crew that have worked on the US series and have worked on this series every single year, and so we know, we put so much faith in our crew to do the right thing and to be respectful to wherever we are, whether that's in Samoa or Fiji. And so it didn't feel like it was hard to try and convince Greg. You know, we obviously, to find that we were bringing, you know, financial benefit to the town, and that's something we love to be able to do, and love that we're doing that in Australia. But it felt quite easy. It felt like we were very much on the same page from the get-go, and it felt like a really, really great relationship very early on.
It's going to be really exciting when the show goes to air this weekend. So Luke, who you mentioned, who worked for the council and then temporarily moved away and ended up working for you, is he's the film liaison person within the council, because we have a film liaison person in all of our councils. And he was so excited when he came in to visit us. I didn't realise just how many local people. I know a lot of Queenslanders were going up, and you had interstate people, and you have a great loyalty to your crews that you take everywhere you go. And the expertise that they have to go into these small towns is really important. But how many local people, did it surprise you how many local people that were able to work on the show?
I guess it didn't surprise us, because that's actually it's kind of one of the criteria that we have when we look for a location. Like, we are really looking to engage as many locals as we can. So we weren't surprised, but we were, grateful and excited that people were putting their hands up. I think we had definitely over 200 Queenslanders be a part of the production, and then over 100 local engagements, and they were working across production, the art department, transport, the unit department, catering. They were across the board. So it was that was fantastic. Not a surprise, because certainly that was one of the things that Greg and Luke were so passionate about, that the locals would definitely want to get involved.
I think also you were saying earlier, I mean, there's nothing like local knowledge, which is why we work so well with all the different councils and communities, because without their local knowledge, I mean, you're a guest in their town, and you do it so well because you do it in so many places. I love the fact that you talk about, the ethics of your company and how important it is for you to discuss that with your crews. We often hear stories about crews going into towns, that might kind of not be invited back again, but they're usually smaller ones doing, mostly commercials and things like that. They love the backdrops. But it's great that you embrace that so strongly, and I'm sure they're going to get inundated with tourists when the show goes to air, when they realise where it was actually made.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to talk a little bit about, none of us really want to talk about the global pandemic, but I guess we need to. So, I mean, obviously it's changed all of our lives. Has it changed the way that you produce reality television in this, what we call this new normal? And was Australian Survivor Series 6 the first show that you've produced during this time?
Me personally, no, it wasn't. I had shot a Channel 7 series called Ultimate Tag. So I had worked on that during parts of the pandemic, and that was difficult. That's a show that involved, having to touch someone, tag someone. So, that was a difficult show, and that had a lot of protocols around it, a lot of COVID, kind of a really solid, strong COVID safe plan in terms of that kind of show. Survivor was a little bit different, obviously still very much, it's very strange having to make, I think about, we talk about it all the time. Imagine how easy it would be to make TV when there was no, COVID, no pandemic. Can you remember that time? A lot of extra thought has to go into it. We have to hire people specifically to oversee our safety, our health and safety, and our COVID practices, our COVID safe practices. So things have changed. I think specifically for Survivor Series 6, what was great is that, Queensland felt a little bit safer in terms of, and then Outback Queensland felt even safer. And we also, because we were able to, and what we do is we travel our crew, or we create our crew, and it's almost like we're creating our own sort of bubble. So, certainly the contestants aren't leaving, they're not going anywhere, so they're safe. We still, had all the normal stuff where it's, wearing masks when required, hand sanitation, catering, you don't serve yourself, catering have servers, so all these unusual small steps that formed to create this whole big plan and whole big protocol. It's strange, but it has become the new normal. Like, people are used to it now. People are used to having to check in whenever they turn up to work. People are used to, well, everyone's wearing masks now, certainly in Sydney. Yeah.
Local product, Brisbane distillery.
Right. Yeah, it's become really normal. People don't question it now. It's what you do. So it does add another layer. You know, we did have to bring our contestants into Queensland earlier than we normally would, just so that they could be safe in Queensland. We knew the borders wouldn't shut if they were traveling from interstate, and that wouldn't hold up the schedule. So, you know, definitely small things like that that add up to be our new normal. Is yeah, it's a bit strange.
Yeah, we engage with a lot of our productions very early on, and we did with you as well, because, you know, we work very closely with Queensland Health. Screen Queensland have on our website, on our COVID-19 platform, we have the Australian, you know, safe work guidelines, but we also have ones pertaining to Queensland itself, and that takes people to the different websites they need to go to when they're in Queensland. And we have amazing support from Queensland Health. You know, I liaise with them probably several times a day, and include, you know, people like you in these conversations. I'm not in the middle of it. I actually, you know, we engage together, because it's really important to understand what needs to happen early if there's suddenly an outbreak somewhere, to make sure that the show goes on, and it always does. But so just going a little bit back to that, and then we'll move away from that, and we'll ask you if you can share some of the secrets of the show coming up. But with risk mitigation plans and COVID supervisors, and obviously in an outback town where they don't have any cases, how early did you engage on that level before you just started to concentrate on doing the show itself, and that it actually merged into being a part of your show?
Yeah, I mean, it's months, absolutely. Yeah, it's not something that we can just come up with sort of on the fly. So Endemol Shine Australia, which is the production company that makes Survivor and many other shows, because we're such a large company, we have sort of at quite a high level, high management level, that filters down work that's always in progress. So we always have a plan that, regardless of kind of where we are, that's always in progress. It's always been updated with regards to, you know, what the legislation is, or what the kind of regulations need to be. And then what happens is it then gets tailored specifically to a production, so to a production in Queensland. So we start going off the Queensland, you know, rules and regulations rather than the New South Wales rules and regulations. So that has to happen really, really early, because but it's not just something that happens and then it stops. It evolves, like as things evolve in the state, and as things evolve with the virus. It's a continual thing. So it will happen months in advance. Like when we think about putting our health and safety team together, just generally, because we have a health and safety and a risk assessment that happens on the show. When we think about the medical team that have to come on board as well, that they have to be already in place and ready to go before anyone sort of steps onto the ground to start working. And those people, you know, the first people that start working, like the unit departments, production, transport, all of that, or the art departments, they have to be ready kind of months in advance. So it is a movable feast, but it's something that we have to think about really early on.
Yeah, I think especially when you start talking about moving equipment in, and obviously we work with you very closely to make sure that you hire as much equipment as you can here. But obviously bringing things up, I mean, how far ahead of time do you need to start thinking about that, especially if a border suddenly closes and obviously there are passes for freight and logistics people. I mean, how early did you have to start thinking about that? Did you try and get ahead of the game, or you're already, you know, chasing borders to get things in, or how did that work for you?
It's a tricky one, and a little bit unusual, because with Fiji, we already had people in Fiji. Like when the border, so this is over a year ago now, we were in a race to get people home. So we already had all our equipment over in Fiji, all of our, you know, we had containers of stuff out there for the build. We were ready to go out there. So it's this series 6 in particular was a little bit different to what a normal series might be, because we were racing to ship things home from Fiji. We were racing to ship people home from Fiji, and then we were kind of still finding, like locking down a location where normally we would probably know where the location is, know, you know, how much lead time we have, know where all of our gear and equipment is in order to transport it there. So look, for this one, it was months again. It was, and actually pre-production for this show, because it got delayed, was actually 18 months long, you know, which is very unusual. But usually it's, you know, about 4 to 6 months of kind of thinking time, and then things will start to get really kind of serious, you know, 3 to 4 months out.
Wow, that's a lot of planning, isn't it? It's an awful lot to think about and concern yourself about. I think we have a saying up here now with all of the producers and line producers and production managers, it's COVID first, production second. Like if you don't have that COVID safe work plan in place, production doesn't happen anyway. And it really doesn't. And the other thing is, we say that we're all outranked now. We're kind of all in it together, as our Prime Minister and everyone tells us. But did you find the same experience? Do you think that every show is like that now?
Look, yes, in a kind of the easy answer is yes, it is like that. It is that we have to hand over to what the rules are. We can't go against them. We have to, and for the good of, you know, the country, really, we don't want to be the ones responsible for any sort of hotspot type of thing. So it's just not worth it. It's not worth the risk to try and do anything cowboy like. And actually it makes it easier. You know, these are the parameters. We just work around them. We're producers. We get creative and how we can make things great within the parameters, within different parameters. So we that's what we have to do now.
Well, obviously finished it. It's been post-produced, and we had a little chat yesterday, Keely. And can you tell us a bit about the incredible fan base of Australian Survivor, and what can they expect the new series going to air this Sunday? I was super excited to hear that, and I'm sure our listeners, you know, the people watching us today, would love to hear about this fan base. Tell us all about it.
Look, I feel like there's two shows, Survivor and Big Brother. In terms of reality shows that have a hugely passionate fan base. They are super fans. They're called super fans, Survivor super fans. And I think because Survivor had its roots back in, the US show many years ago. There are 40 plus seasons now in terms of the American Survivor, and it's global as well. There are other territories that make it. It just resonates with people, and people get so passionate about it, and passionate about the game, and passionate about the people who play the game, and the way that you can play the game, and the twists. And so, there's a lot of forums online. There's a lot of social media conversations and chat that happen. And it's people who do end up playing Survivor. You actually, at the end of it, feel like you're really part of a family. You become part of the Survivor alumni. People are in contact. I know that different Survivor players are in contact with people who have played in different seasons, because it's it's a really unique experience that you only really know what it's about once you play it. And so the fans are like the same. Fans connect with each other based on this kind of one pure love as well. So we understand that, and we respect our fans so much. And so every time we kind of step into a creative room to say, who's going to play, or who, what's this series going to be about, we have our fans in mind. We have, what are the audience going to love? What are they going to enjoy seeing? We very much think about them when we're in the creative room.
It's going to be interesting, because obviously, things are a bit tricky in different states at the moment, and a lot of people are glued to their television sets. And I guess, TVs are in every room. Do you think that your audience level will rise when it goes to air this Sunday? What are you expecting? What are you anticipating?
That's a loaded question, because television, the way that people watching television has changed dramatically in the last few years. People are watching on their phones. People are watching, catch up on their computers days later. I know that there's going to be a lot of other, exciting programs on Sunday night. So there's a lot of things to watch. There's a lot of great stuff to watch at the moment. So there's also the Olympics coming on soon. So I would hope that across the board, the fans will find a way to watch. And I don't know whether the numbers will rise in terms of the overnight ratings. But I think that it will. And Survivor's always been this kind of show. It's the kind of show that people talk about and then tell their friends to watch and then get hooked, and maybe they'll save all the shows to watch, one after the other because they want to binge it. So it's I think, so generally television has been watched very differently. Free to air is there's a new sort of way to watch television, and where we understand that. But I also think that this series is so exciting, and it hasn't been, we haven't been on air for a little while, and there's so many great characters playing the game in ways that we haven't seen before, that I think it will get a lot of traction.
We've obviously seen some great trailers, and there's some amazing drone footage. And Luke, who you'd mentioned earlier, I didn't realise just how versatile he was. And he was saying that, he's a drone operator as well. I mean, obviously you had a lot of specialists up there, but the trailers look amazing. The beautiful wide shots of that landscape. I mean, I work with a lot of people here at Screen Queensland that love Australian Survivor. I won't name them. And I'm pretty certain that there's going to be a massive audience in Cloncurry this weekend as well. It's super exciting, but Luke has been coming down here and extending his skills and looking forward to, spending more time in the industry. But is there anything you can tell us about the contestants, or, is there any little snippets you can give us?
A little bit. I guess all of our cast have been announced now. So if you follow Survivor on Instagram or social media or anything, there's pictures of all of our cast now. I think what was great this year was the fact that we had a theme, brains versus brawn, and it just plays into the show so well. There are some very, very smart people, and some people who just will turn the screws on the game, and so people who will push other people's buttons, which is great television, but also in terms of the game of Survivor, you kind of sit back and go, why would you do that? And then you see it play out, and actually you're like, oh, hats off to you for doing that. So there's some really clever gameplay. There's a political operative, George, who he's one of the ones that enjoys pushing people's buttons, and so he has a kind of pretty big story in episode 1. And I think it's also what's great in the Brawns tribe in terms of seeing, these strong people who really know how to use their body, and that's, their main asset, coming up against people who just use their brain in the different ways that they play and the different things that are important to them in the game, whether it's friendships or whether it's just pure strategy. So that's something we found really interesting with this particular series. There's a few more puzzles and kind of strategic games in terms of the brains v brawn, and it's actually quite evenly matched. I think people might be a little bit surprised because Survivor is a very physical game, and it is very physical still, this series, but people might be surprised how evenly matched both the tribes are when it comes to the challenges. So yeah.
I imagine also it would have been quite a challenge for your designer. And I know that, you take, designers on your shows around with you, and I think that's really important. So how difficult was it for your designer to start to rethink about the brains versus brawns with you? Do you work collaboratively to get together very early? I mean, when you knew you couldn't go to Fiji and you were looking for somewhere else, and obviously having to rebuild a set was a big challenge as well. How involved do you become with the production designer, and what challenges did he have moving into a place like Cloncurry?
Yeah, so our production designer is an Australian who lives overseas, and actually often we have a lot of international crew, Australians who live overseas, but because Survivor's usually filmed overseas. It doesn't matter where you come from, you know, everyone's having to travel somewhere. But we didn't have access to a lot of those people this year. So he designed the new tribal council set from afar. So we had to send him a lot of imagery and a lot of drone footage and a lot of to get him to really feel what it's like out there. We also, in terms of, you know, we felt it was important to very early on, we were in contact with the elders of the Midakudi people in terms of, you know, the traditional owners of the area, of the country there, and, you know, just speaking to them about the totems. You'll notice, for any of those Survivor fans out there, they'll notice we designed 2 different motifs, so one for the brains and one for the brawn, and the brains was a crow and the brawn is the olive python. And we actually had, because they are totems for the Midakudi people, and they actually represent those kind of 2 schools of thought, the brains and the brawn. And we had a original Gold Coast graphic designer who actually came on to design those specific motifs. So I've kind of gone roundabout in answering your question, but we took a lot of inspiration from where we were, from the people that we were meeting, but then also had to bring in, you know, our team who know what it takes to make a Survivor challenge, who knows what things are exciting. You know, we had to amend some things slightly because it was, you know, there was slightly less water, a bit more bull dust, and so we, you know, in the very first episode, and you've probably seen it on the promos, but, you know, there's this amazing kind of cart that comes down like a roller coaster and just flies up into the dust. You know, we would never be able to do that in Fiji or Samoa. You know, it's this great iconic shot, I think, that sums up, you know, where we are in the outback and the kinds of designs and the kinds of challenges that we tweaked to make that work. I also think the tribal council set is very different to anything we've ever done before. You know, usually we're in a kind of a rainforest in Fiji, but we had this incredible open land, open area that with these awesome rock formations. And so for the first time, we have a tribal council that is, you know, open to the elements, like that, where you can see the sky, you can see there's red dirt, you know, on the ground. So we're straight on red dirt. We didn't have to build a platform or anything. So it has a really different, really Australian, really beautiful feel to it. So we're pretty proud of that.
And thank you for keep mentioning the red dirt, because it's one of the things that helps attract shows to come up here. And Cloncurry are just going to love you because they're going to be inundated. But I love the fact that you immersed yourself in the local community and the local elders. And I can't wait to see these totems. That's such an important part of what you do. And I didn't realise until you mentioned it then. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's I was going to say they will be the little totems. So on the challenge flags, the buffs will be quite small. You might not see them there, but you'll see there's a challenge coming up, and maybe the second week where there's a big puzzle that will show off those totems as well.
Did you get a chance to see anything else when you were working in Queensland? Even though you're from Queensland, did you get an opportunity to do any other tourism activities while you were there, or?
Look, me personally, not a lot. I got to Mount Isa, which was a big day out for me. But some of the crew went to Julia Creek Baths, which I was very jealous of, which is a kind of a drive away on their days off. My days off, I didn't really get too many, so unfortunately. But I loved Cloncurry. We actually, you know, I had a great little house there, and I used to kind of spend my days off because I couldn't go too far away, you know, in the backyard in my house, which I loved. Visiting the shops, you know, I think a few of us when we had days off, you know, there were local shops, little boutiques that we would spend all our money in because, you know, they were so beautiful, and we were so far from home. So it made us feel quite at home. If I had some more time, I would have loved to have gone a little bit further afield to take it all in.
Well, we're so pleased that you spent your money there because, Mayor Greg did mention that a few times. It's like, I don't think they quite realised just how much, involvement that the crew would have living in a small town. I think people think it's about the accommodation and it's petrol, and they don't realise that there's the people themselves on the crew that come in. They only have like 1 or 2 days off a week, and they love to do things. They love to kind of mix with the community, spend money, go to those little boutiques. Did you find also that the local community would actually open shops at different times for you when they realized exactly how much time you were spending, what you would, how much money you were spending there?
Yeah, absolutely. Like yeah, there were the boutique that we're talking about, the bakery, certainly whenever I needed, which was at odd times, needed to go to the supermarket was always open. So I'm not sure if that was specifically for us, but yeah, there were, I never kind of went wanting for things whenever I needed to fill the fridge or fill my wardrobe or anything like that. No, it was great. It did feel like, and they're so friendly, everyone's so friendly. They know that you're working on the show, and they will have a chat with you and kind of check in with you and find out where you're going. So, it's a lot different to being in Sydney or doing a show in Sydney.
And did you find you had an opportunity, or did the production hire any local people as attachments on the production, to give them that learning experience that you were talking about?
Yeah, so certainly, specifically, the person that I know and worked most closely with was, we had an overnight producer who came in. So we have quite a big producing team, so we have to who work through the day and also into the night. So we are filming 24/7 on Survivor. And so it's a really hard gig, because the overnight producers are basically on their own. They have to look out for the contestants. So there is, there's security and everything out there, but they have to monitor the contestants, but they also have to film them. So if there's any action going on in the middle of the night, they are filming them, and they're either with one other producer or on their own. So they're a shooter producer. And so we had someone that was maybe only a couple of years out of uni, who came out, and was his first big kind of television gig, and he was amazing. And I believe he might be doing something else for us that I can't talk too much about, but like he was great. And so it was great to have that opportunity to kind of show people what we do and help to kind of nurture them in the industry.
I think that's wonderful. And it's nice that you touched on the 24/7, because your shows are 24/7. I mean, we've only got a couple of minutes left. I knew that we'd chat for ages, but can you just give us a brief insight to what 24/7 really means, and when you talk about shooter producers, it's almost like you've got 2 or 3 different crews that work around the clock. How does that actually work?
Yeah, so we have a big team of camera crews, of audio crews, and of producers who sort of work in teams throughout the day to cover everything at the tribe camps, to cover the challenges, and to cover anything during daylight hours. And then at night, obviously the game is still playing. The game is still on in terms of Survivor. And so we have a reduced crew who shoot overnight, and so we kind of roster crews on. So it's a lot smaller crew who work at night, and really only kind of shooter producers, and then skeleton sort of production staff who need to be awake at that time. But the bulk of our filming does happen during the day, but we've always got someone on and someone available at night as well, all through the night.
I'm glad you explained that, because obviously we can see when something's shot at night, and you've done enough shows now, and we can see the depth of crew, and when they're first going into it, we always try and explain, this is not a 9 to 5 job, but these shows are 24/7, because we see it, as the audience, we can see exactly what's going on, and editors obviously that work through the night and trying to cut pieces together. I guess that's a really big important part of it too. So the exciting thing is you've got everyone up there with you, including all the production people.
Yeah, so all of our production crew were up there, but we do our post-production in Sydney, because that's sort of closer to where the network is, and in terms of screenings, and that's a lot easier for us. And we don't have, because Survivor is a post-produced show and it's not a live show, we have that ability to kind of send rushers back to Sydney to make sure they're all kind of safe in Sydney, and then the post-production starts. So but it is a big machine, you know. The post-production machine is you know, it's 24 episodes, about that, I think. And it's, you know, it's a huge sort of it's a huge machine of cogs that have to keep working. So, you know, working while we're still shooting, starting the post-production to make sure that we can get, you know, bring the highest quality sort of story to everyone.
Well, it's been absolutely fabulous talking to you, Keely. I think we didn't even get a chance to ask. I think we've answered most questions that people wanted to give us anyway. And you were so beautiful with your introduction, and you said so much about yourself straight away, which is wonderful. I just have one more question for you. Can we expect you back in Queensland with another production soon, perhaps? Or what will bring you back?
Look, I will always come back to Queensland, but yes, there could be something else in the works. I can't say too much about that, but that's all I can really say. But we absolutely loved working in Queensland. We had so much support, you know, even from the Premier and from Screen Queensland, from Tourism Queensland, from the local Cloncurry Council, from the traditional owners, from the locals there. We just it was such a positive experience for us. And so we will not hesitate to come back.
Thank you so much for mentioning our Premier. I mean, the Honourable Anastasia Palaszczuk is the Premier of our state. She's also the Minister for Trade and Investment, and she's also our Minister because we fall under trade. And without her, you know, without the Queensland government providing the production attraction strategy, it would be very hard for us to support. And we're so excited that we have such amazing support from her here in Queensland, and also us at Screen Queensland and our Film Friendly Pathways program. So thank you so much for mentioning that. And thank you for the wonderful amount of time that you've given us, and being so honest and so open with everything.
That's okay, it's my pleasure. And the Premier is welcome to come up anytime whenever we're in Queensland. That's
wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Gina.
Thank you. Bye.